Hello students, a very good morning to all, and how are you all? And please tell me how your preparation is going, your everyday preparation. Because from today, I'm thinking that during your everyday preparation, we come across several doubts. A very good morning to all. During your everyday preparation, what all doubts you have, you can do one thing that in the comment section, you can write the name of that topic or specific point. And every day after our live class, I will try to address those doubts within 5 to 10 minutes. So you can do this thing. You can note down these small doubts, what all you have, and you can write in the comment section. Okay, so with that, let's start our discussion for 31st March. For today, we shall be discussing three very important topics, and those are Transgender Amendment Bill. The second is extracellular RNA, and third topic is related to Baltic Sea. So, here basically we will be discussing all the locations which are given in the news. So, let's start with the first topic. So this topic is related to transgender amendment bill. So see, this bill has been in news for past few days. But why we were not discussing it? Because it was at the transition state. Any bill will become only important when it has received the assent of President of India. So, as you know, what is the process for a bill to become an act? So, if we are talking about the normal bill, not the money bill, so normal bill have to pass from the first house of the parliament, then it will go through second house of the parliament, and after that it will go through the presidential assent. Only if president has given assent to that bill, it will become an act, and only if it becomes an act, it will be important for our exam. So yesterday itself, the president of India has given assent to transgender amendment bill. That's why it has become more important for prelims as well as mains. So briefly, let's discuss a background that so that you will have an idea that why such amendments were made. So, see, as you know, in 2019, an act was brought by the government of India. And what was that act? It was related to transgenders' rights. Transgenders' rights. What was the purpose of this act? Its purpose was to protect the transgender community from the social discrimination or social exclusion which they were facing in the society. So, according to this act, a definition was provided in this act. And what was the definition of transgenders in this act? Transgender is any person who has been assigned Transgender is any person whose gender does not match the gender which was assigned at the time of birth. His gender is not matching the gender which was assigned at the birth, and those persons we call as transgenders. Now, very important thing in 2019 Act was its very important part was the right to self identify. That means if person A belongs to transgender community, then he only has the right to self-identify. He can identify himself or herself that whether he or she is transgender or not. So no medical board was involved, no other person was involved. So this was very good thing. And this thing was in line with the 2014 judgment of NALSA, that is National Legal Service Authority of India. So NALSA in 2014 has upheld the rights of transgenders to self-identify themselves because it was in line with right to human dignity and right to life. So all these provisions were included in 2019 Act, and it was good thing. Now, another important thing is when this definition of transgender was given in 2019 Act, so various no categories were involved. That no based on all these four or five categories, these are the transgender person. But now in 2026 Act, these categories have been reduced. Means some of the people have been excluded from the definition of transgenders, and this is the major cause of concern because now as per the transgender community it will lead to the discrimination and exclusion with those people who have now been excluded. So this was the overall background, And what was the reason why this act was brought? Because according to the government of India, since this definition of transgender is too vague and lot of people are included in this, so government is not able to provide the targeted delivery of welfare services to this community who are being discriminated against. So this was the reason why this act was brought. Now let's discuss in detail that what was the definition in the original act and what all exclusions are made in 2026 act. So first of all, we will be discussing about the definition in the 2019 Act. So 2019 Act included trans men, trans women, intersex persons, gender queer persons, and socio-cultural identities like Hijra and Kinnar. So what is the meaning of trans men and trans women? That trans man means a person who was assigned the gender as male during the time of birth, but at present he is living as female in the setup of female, and vice versa for trans women. So now biologically their identity is different, but they are recognizing themselves as a different kind of person. Talking about intersex persons, so these are persons with the biological variations. Biological variations means, for example, some changes in the reproductive organs or some changes in the hormones only. For example, when we talk about the chromosomes in females, so we talk about X and X chromosomes. For males, we talk about X and Y chromosomes. So maybe in intersex persons, there may be some changes in the no sequencing of chromosomes. For example, you may find X, X and Y, or you may find X and O. So in this way, there are some biological variations in intersex persons. Talking about gender queer persons, so these are persons with the fluid identity. That means their identity can change over time. No, we cannot categorize them specifically under male or female. Talking about socio-cultural identities, so like Hijra, Kinnar, these are the categories of no, these people like trans men, trans women, intersex person. So based on the community or culture, they are being identified under all these names. Important thing, as I have already discussed, the 2019 Act has provided the concept of self-identification of gender. That means a person A can say that yes, I identify myself with this gender, and no one can question that thing. Now talking about the amendment which is made in 2026 Act. So this act includes the people with socio-cultural identities. So it was included here also, like Hijra, Kinna, Jokta, these are included now also. It includes the intersex persons, the persons who have the biological variations in reproductive organs or the hormones, and the persons with congenital or biological variations. So basically, this is the category of intersex persons only. And new thing is, it also includes the person who are forced into transgender identity through surgical or hormonal procedures. So basically, when we talk about human trafficking, so to do human trafficking, to no not to reveal the identity, these type of surgeries are being done. So this act includes the person forced into the transgender identity. Now let's talk about the exclusion. So it excludes the person with the self-perceived gender identity. Self-perceived means when we are talking about trans men and trans women, because biologically their gender is different, but they are perceiving themselves as different person. So this bill is excluding them. Second, it excludes different sexual orientations. Sexual orientations like the gender queer person, which we discussed, that their identity is fluid and identity keeps on changing. So basically, these kind of persons are now being excluded from the act. And what is the justification of the government? So as I have already discussed, according to government, the earlier definition was too vague. And since the definition was too vague, the government was not able to target the genuine beneficiaries, because similar thing we talk about PDS, right, public distribution system. So there also we have the concept of targeted PDS, targeted public distribution system, because the people who are very poor mainly we have to target them, and there must be no exclusion error. So here also, to avoid the exclusion errors, the government has narrowed down the definition so that only the needy persons can get the benefit of welfare schemes. And important thing here is government is focusing on the biological conditions and government is not focusing on your self identification. So biological conditions like the intersex persons and self identification means like trans men and trans women. Now, let's quickly discuss about the key features of the bill because they can directly be asked in the exam. So, first of all, the revised definition. So, I think we discussed the definition in detail now. So, definition it defines transgenders as those with socio-cultural identities we discussed and the biological variations. Now, it removes the right to self-determination. Please remember that 2019 Act has recognized the right to self-determination but this act removes that right to self determination. Next important thing is about the verification authority. So earlier, what happened? Earlier, if a person identifies himself or herself as a transgender person, then he has to do only one thing. He has to get a certificate of identity from district magistrate. And no, it was also based on the self identification. But now this identification will be done based on the recommendation of a medical board. So, medical board will verify your transgender identity. Next thing is about the stronger penal provisions. So earlier also there were punishments for the offenses against transgender person. Now these punishments have been increased, graded punishments, and the penalties are now being increased up to life imprisonment. Next important thing is about the National Council for Transgender Person. So government has made modification here also in the composition. So here this council will now have the representation from state governments as well as from UTs and this thing will happen on the rotational basis. So chance by chance people will become member of this council. So these were some of the important points of the bill. Now, briefly, let's discuss about the key concerns. So, some of the concerns we discussed in the summary only. So, first is about the loss of agency. Loss of agency means now you no longer can identify yourself that who you are. The medical board will decide. So, this is the loss of agency. Second is the exclusion due to narrow definition. So, see, if you have narrowed down the definition, that means you are excluding many people like trans men and trans women. So if they are excluded, now they may be facing the exclusion and discrimination. Next is the violation of privacy and dignity. See, if medical board has to recognize that it has to give the certificate that of what gender you are. That means in that examination you might feel vulnerable. So this is the no violation of your privacy and dignity that someone else is deciding that of what gender you are. Next is the lack of consultation. So this was mentioned in no in various newspapers that this bill was passed in Lok Sabha, then it was passed in the Rajya Sabha. But major thing here was that opposition parties were demanding that bill must be sent to the standing committee, parliamentary standing committee, so that there must be proper scrutiny because people are also resisting against this bill. But it was passed without any consultation. That means there is not the complete will of the people of India in passing of this bill. So this was another important point. Now let's discuss the significance because since we discussed the negatives, let's discuss some positives also. So first positive point is since the government said that if we are narrow downing the definition, then we are able to target no very easily. So target will become easy, and hence the implementation will become easy. Now you know that what all persons you have to target and what all persons you have to exclude. Second important thing is the strong legal safeguards because the Act has introduced the graded punishments. For very serious crimes, graded punishments are included. Third is the protection of bodily integrity because please focus here. Here in the summary we discussed that Act also includes persons forced into transgender identity. So Act also penalizes this thing. By penalizing forced identity changes, the bill reinforces the constitutional principle of dignity and bodily autonomy. So these were some of the positives related to the bill. Now, a homework for you. In the comment section, you have to tell me that NALSA is a constitutional or extra constitutional or statutory body, and you have to tell me the year also, that in which year it was established. Next important topic is about extracellular RNA. So this topic will be very, very important because nowadays the questions on biotechnology has been increasing in UPSC prelims. That's why you must know the entire concept of RNA, extracellular RNA, its functions, etc. So this topic I took from The Hindu, so everything was given in detail. Let's understand about the context of this news. See, as we know that, for example, this is a cell and this is a nucleus. This is a cell. So inside the nucleus, we have RNA. And apart from nucleus, there are other organelles in the cells also which contains RNA. For example, mitochondria. Mitochondria also has its own RNA. For example, this cytoplasm. Cytoplasm also has its own RNA. So earlier what we thought, so whatever may be, how many organelles may be having RNA, but the main thing here is that RNA is present only inside the cell. And earlier our conception was if RNA leaves the cell, that means if RNA is exposed to the outer environment, then it will be destroyed completely. This was our earlier perception. Now, a recent study has been done, and according to this recent study, extracellular RNA also exists. That means RNA can leave the environment of the cell and go to the outer environment, and then also it will not get damaged. So this is a very big breakthrough. This is a very big finding because based on this, we can focus on the diagnosis of big diseases like the cancer. So this is a very big finding. So just now I discussed a simple summary. Now let's discuss what all is given in news. So a recent study found that bacteria release extracellular RNA into disinfected drinking water. So earlier, what was our concept? Earlier, we assumed that RNA could function only inside the cell, and if RNA leaks out, then it can be destroyed by the enzymes. But now, what happened? That bacteria has released extracellular RNA in the disinfected drinking water before that bacteria was destroyed or became inactive. So now, based on this, scientists can analyze the survival strategies of microorganisms, and in that way more robust technologies can be developed, more robust disinfectant technologies can be developed, and we can deal with various diagnosis technologies of diseases. For example, this can help us to detect diseases like the cancer or heart conditions. And why this will be possible? Because see, this thing is also mentioned in the article. As I have already said, that extracellular RNA can also exist according to this study. So as earlier, what we knew that if RNA leaves the environment of the cell, RNA can be destroyed. Now, this study says that since RNA can be destroyed easily, these microorganisms, this bacteria has released RNA in the outer environment, but it is covered by a molecular container. So, because of this covering, it cannot be destroyed by the enzymes in the outer environment. And now, this extracellular RNA is used to communicate between different cells. So it is used as a mode of communication between different cells. Now, if extracellular RNA can communicate between different cells, then it can lead to the change in the gene expression. Change in gene expression, that means the any microorganism or DNA or RNA of any microorganism can mutate. So this mutation word, I think you might have read a lot during the COVID-19 pandemic, because since mutation or changes were happening in the virus, it was becoming very difficult for the scientists to make vaccine. So same thing is happening here. Now, as we know, now because of the recent finding, we know that extracellular RNA also exists. Then scientists can work on the new modern technology so as they can deal with various kind of diseases. So let's discuss briefly important points about the extracellular RNA. So the cellular RNA exists inside the nucleus and other organelles, but inside the cell. What about extracellular RNA? It exists outside the cells, and where they exist? Inside the bodily fluids such as blood, saliva, urine, and cerebrospinal fluid. So these things can also be asked in the exam. That whether exists only inside the cell, your statement will be wrong because it can be found inside other bodily fluids also, and that RNA we call as extracellular RNA. Now, second important thing is about the molecular container. So, as I have already said, that because of since RNA is covered by the molecular containers, it cannot miRNA, that is microRNA, and mRNA, that is messenger RNA. So, you have to give me at least one function of both so that they both can be easily differentiated. Now let's discuss about the function of extracellular RNA. So I think we already discussed here this extracellular RNA is used as a mode of communication between two cells, and this will lead to change in gene expression. So it is used as a communication system, allowing cells to deliver instructions to other cells and change in gene behavior. And since now scientists know all these things, we can work more easily on the immune system, tissue repair, etc. And what will be significance of this? It enables the diagnosis of diseases like cancer and heart diseases. Let's discuss briefly about the RNA or ribonucleic acid. So RNA is a biological molecule that helps to convert genetic information into proteins. So see, this is nucleus of any cell. Inside the nucleus, we have DNA. Now, DNA will get converted into RNA through a process what we call as transcription. And this RNA will be converted into proteins. This RNA will be converted into proteins. So here, this is what it is given, that it helps convert genetic information into proteins. So conversion of RNA into proteins we call as translation. Next important thing is RNA is single-stranded nucleic acid. So as you can see, this is the structure of RNA. And DNA is the double-stranded molecule. Next thing is RNA contains ribose sugar, phosphate group, and nitrogen bases. These things are important. You have to remember this. First is RNA single-stranded. Second is it contains ribose sugar, phosphate group, and nitrogenous bases. Now these nitrogenous bases are more important because here nitrogenous bases are adenine, guanine, cytosine, and uracil. But DNA also has four nitrogenous bases, but instead of uracil in DNA you have thymine. So you have to remember these nitrogenous bases also. Now it says that RNA exists in different forms like mRNA, tRNA, rNA, etc. Because of that, various places are important for the exam. So here, recently, a drone from Ukraine has attacked Ust-Luga port in Russia, and Ust-Luga is a major Baltic Sea export hub for Russia. So here, Ust-Luga discussion on Ust-Luga port is important. Second important place is the Primorsk port. So Ukraine has attacked on the Primorsk port of Russia also. So three things we have to discuss about the Baltic Sea, about the Ust-Luga port, its location, about the Primorsk port. So quickly, let's discuss about the Baltic Sea first. So before looking for the points, let's discuss about the location of Baltic Sea and what all things are present nearby. So this is Baltic Sea. This is Gulf of Bothnia. This is Gulf of Finland. This is Gulf of Riga. Okay, so main Gulf are done here. Then if we talk on the western side, so this is Skagerrak Strait. This is Kattegat Strait. Okay, so these were the major geographical regions here. Then, if we talk about the countries, so what all countries are surrounding Baltic Sea? So, first is Sweden. Please remember, Norway does not surround Baltic Sea. Please remember that students generally get confused in this. First country is Sweden. Then we have Finland. Then Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Germany, and Denmark. So these all countries are surrounding Baltic Sea, and this is the location of North Sea. Now let's come to the points, if anything other important is there. So it is a semi-enclosed inland sea. Through the map only you can see it does not have no. It is not directly exposed to the sea, so it is semi-enclosed sea. It is semi-enclosed sea of the Atlantic Ocean situated in the northern Europe. And yes, one more important thing, yes, this is Scandinavian Peninsula. So it extends northward from the southern Denmark. So it extends northward. This is southern Denmark. It extends northward from the southern Denmark to within a few degrees latitude of the Arctic Circle, separating the Scandinavian Peninsula from the continental Europe. So this is Scandinavian Peninsula. This is here. This is completely continental Europe. So it is separating Scandinavian Peninsula and continental Europe. It comprises several branches. So, Gulf of Bothnia, we discussed, Gulf of Finland, we discussed, Gulf of Riga, we discussed. Then we discussed about the Danish straits like Kattegat and Skagerrak. This is Kattegat and this is Skagerrak. And it is the youngest sea on our planet. Why do we call it as youngest sea? Because it's formed only around 15,000 to 10,000 years ago. So during this period, the glaciers were retreating, they were melting, and hence Baltic Sea was formed. So it is considered as the youngest sea on Earth. Other important things about the surrounding countries. So I think we already discussed about the countries. So basically, 9 countries are surrounding it. So please focus on the name of these countries. After that, it is cited as the world's largest brackish inland water body. Brackish means that it is not as fresh as the river water, but it is not as salty as sea water. So somewhere in the middle, we call it as brackish. So important thing is it is not fresh water body, it is brackish inland water body. Next important thing is numerous number of rivers drain into Baltic Sea. A question was asked on Red Sea that no rivers enter Red Sea. Numerous number of rivers drain on in Baltic Sea. Important river is the Neva. Neva is the largest river that drains into Baltic Sea. Now coming to the islands. So about the island, Gotland Island. Gotland Island is located in Sweden. Is the largest island in the Baltic Sea. So let's focus on the Gotland Island. See, this is the location of Gotland Island. Gotland is located in Sweden and is considered as the largest island of Baltic Sea. Now, another important thing is there is issue of the harmful algal blooms in the Baltic Sea. So this is also important. And now, since these ports were in the news, so let's discuss about the location. So first, we will talk about the Ust-Luga port. I think it is visible. Okay. Okay, so this is Russia and this is the location of Ust-Luga port. So Ust-Luga port, port of Baltic Sea, and second port is the Primorsk. So Ust-Luga, Primorsk, in which country they are located? In Russia, and they are ports of which sea? They are ports of Baltic Sea. So yes, we are done with this place. Now, a very simple practice question for you, but no, this type of question can be asked in exam also. So, a question is, with reference to RNA, consider the following statements. First is, it is found only inside the cells. Second is, it is always destroyed immediately after leaving the cell. So, please go through the video once again. Please go through this topic of extracellular RNA and give me answer in the comment section. So today you have to answer 3 things. First, you have to answer the question on NALSA, that whether it is constitutional, extra constitution or statutory body. Then you have to tell me about its year of formation. Then you have to tell me the difference between mRNA RNA, and mRNA. And next, you have to give the answer of this practice question. So yes, these were the three topics for today. And if you have any doubt, you can write in the comment section. And yes, that's all for today. Thank you, and we shall meet in next lecture.